Welcome to our first, modern Dissecting design here on the channel. We're going to be looking at Resident Evil 2. And how well does this remake capture the essence of horror, as well as balancing the action-based design? Now, the footage you're going to be seeing is of the Claire B hardcore route. I did this off stream, so this should be all new for the regular folks watching. I will be fast forwarding or speeding things up as need be, as well as cutting out the cutscenes, except for one that was kind of cathartic. But Resident Evil 2 is obviously the remake of the original game. And it is designed to be essentially a top to bottom growth or restoration of that design. There is a lot that is changed in this one, as well as a few key elements that are persistent across the various plays. Like I said, this is going to be on the Claire B route. What that means, essentially, is that there are four ways of playing Resident Evil 2, at least from the story campaign point of view. You have Leon and Claire A, and then their respective B sides. The B sides are unlocked by at least finishing the A side of one of the characters, and is essentially a remixed version of the game. You're still going to the same environments, fighting the same enemies, but item drops, puzzle solutions, and just the general starting position changes. In this B route, we basically begin already at the police station, unlike in the A route, where there's this whole run-in into the city and avoiding the zombies at the start. But with that said, as Claire begins to run, we're going to start to speed things up here. Let's talk a little bit about the basics now. So with Resident Evil 2 here, this is obviously going to be survival horror. Our mission is to complete the game and not get chewed, sliced, spat on, eviscerated, and more. Puzzles in the game fall into two kinds. Some basic logic ones, and the old standard, there's something locked or standing in my way, let me find an item to get around it. Now, obviously, the biggest change in Resident Evil 2 compared to previous entries, or the original, is that we're now doing an over-the-shoulder camera system with free aiming. And this is a major part of how the game has changed. I'll also be pointing out a lot of my stupid mistakes that I've made as they show up, and I think one's about to happen in the next 30 seconds. But on this B route, we get a different handgun, and that gun only uses a specific kind of handgun ammo. So right here, we're going to avoid this zombie, and you'll notice that the zombie does not come into this room. There are several rooms in Resident Evil 2 that are essentially enemy prohibited, and that does come into play in some of the advanced strategies. So here's mistake number one. I threw this grenade way too early. And now comes mistake number two, as I get a little too cocky and take a bite. Playing this on hardcore mode, you are basically 2 hits away from dying at all times. And I made a lot of mistakes early on with not conserving my ammo. But with that said, we're going to be talking or spending time with each of the enemies throughout this play. So let's talk a little bit about the zombies now, as the beginning of the game is where they're at their most threatening. Now, traditionally in Resident Evil and in most horror games, your basic enemy is the fodder. Something that it's going to be annoying 4 to 5 minutes into the game, and then quickly you're going to forget about them as you get bigger and badder weapons. Not here in Resident Evil 2. And the zombie design in this game may actually be one of my favorite enemies in all of horror, the whole horror genre in of itself. So, the zombies themselves have a sense of dynamic or emergent behavior to them, at least on hardcore difficulty. I didn't play on standard or casual. But the zombies themselves, their actual movement and their gait or pace are dependent on the amount of damage you do and where you do it. Many zombies, as you shoot them in the head, will start moving faster as they're trying to kind of keep themselves up while chasing after you. Shooting a zombie in the leg or foot will stagger them. And I should have done more of that later on. Now, there is a headshot chance, I think you may have just saw that right there, at least briefly, that if you hit the enemy in the head, their head will pop, and that is an instant kill. Otherwise, zombies have a lot of health, and even if you knock them down, that doesn't mean anything. They can easily get right back up. Now, I'm picking up some defensive items here that are used to counter a zombie bite, as well as gunpowder. But at this early stage of the game, the zombies themselves are your major threat, and they actually continue to be so dependent on your ammo supply throughout the game. Another interesting twist on the zombie element is that they will track you across rooms. I believe from what I've seen is that it works that if they know where you are and you are only one room away, they will try and bridge that gap. If you move 2 rooms away, then they will basically just kind of lose sight of you. Another thing to keep in mind is that the zombies' movement is also completely dynamic, and if you leave an area and come back, they may be in different spots, and you really can't rely on the zombies kind of just staying around a single area. Now, the board that I picked up is used to board up windows and prevent zombies from adding in as the game goes on. That's a major part of the kind of the mechanical nature of the game that we'll talk about later. Now, what I'm doing right here is picking up the weapon locker key, and again, the general path through the game, regardless of character or playthrough, remains the same. But there are some major beats or differences, again, that we'll focus on later on. But as I speed up the footage some more, let's talk about the first area of RE2, and that's the police station. This is a very well-designed kind of horror area, in my opinion. How this place is built is that there are multiple paths through the police station to where you need to go. Your overall mission is to get through the statue that's in the main hall. Now, fans of Resident Evil 2, the original, know or remember that part, finding the 3 medallions. Now, with the police station itself, we're about to cross over to the main hall as soon as I apply this fuse, which I believe, if I remember, I have to go back to the game's first save point. Playing this on the B side, your save areas have been moved around. Normally, when you start the game or get to the police station, the main hall is your kind of your base of operations. Here, it's this side area. But after this guy apparently doesn't want to die, we're going to start exploring this area, or starting to explore the police station. And again, here's another stupid mistake that I'm making. I am using way too many bullets on these zombies. And I actually want to just interrupt this topic for a quick second to explain something. As you've noticed, as I'm shooting zombies, the reticle kind of closes in, or focuses in. What that is essentially is a damage boost. That as long as you're shooting while the reticle is closed, you will do more damage and have a greater chance of headshotting or head popping an enemy. It's something that I think a lot of people miss, and even I did on my first play. But as I'm busy, hopefully scavenging the items that I need, we're going to move into the major part of the police station. I got the fuse, and I'm just going to cut things a little bit here so we can get right to it. But here is the main hall, and normally this is a safe area until you return to the police station later on. Here, not so much. And again, I am really going through a lot of ammo this early in. I do love her high-pitched voice as things are fast-forwarded here. But with the police station set up like this, you're going to be having to get those 3 medallions. That is your key mechanic, or that's the key form of progression here. Everything else is just secondary. Now, there are upgrades that we will be picking up, but I'm going to be trying to move as fast as I can. This was my first time playing through the B route of Claire, so I was a little bit more cautious than I was with my normal plays. This is the hallway from hell. As enemies will spawn in, Mr. X, who we'll talk about later on, is going to appear here, and enemies will start coming through these windows. This is a required area to go through, too. Right now I'm trying to make things easier for myself, but I think later on I will still die at least one time here. But on your A route through, this is where you're going to be going through primarily to get the map and open up the west hallway and the second save spot. Also, I didn't point this out. Whenever I look at the map and I see a red room, that means that there are still items for me to find in there. It's a very handy way of knowing where they are and you don't lose track of them. Now I'm done with that item, so we get rid of it. And I'm picking up some of the items I need to get the third and final medallion. And that one I'm saving for the end because of what happens. So right now, what I'm trying to do is make my way up, and more importantly, I'm trying to start to get access to some of the basic upgrades. Inventory upgrade, and Claire's first weapon upgrade. But we'll talk more about the weapon upgrades when we actually get to it. Again, with Claire B's route here, I was kind of getting lost at the start, or just trying to figure my way around with these different conditions. So this is the second save area right here, and this becomes another kind of safe haven for you. But typically, the general strategy to play this game, at least at a high level, is you should only kill enemies that you're going to revisit those areas. And if you do your job right, you shouldn't have to revisit too much in the police station. Now, for this play, there are little lockers and safes that you can open up. And since this was my second, or actually my third time playing Resident Evil 2, I just had them handy nearby, so I didn't have to look them up. Basically, once you get to the B route, all's fair in love and war. Now, we're being chased by a few more zombies, and again, I am really hurting for handgun ammo. And that is not good for Claire. And we'll talk more about those differences later on. But what I'm doing right now is trying to... Oh, and there that zombie just went. And this guy just decided to show up out of nowhere. But what I'm trying to do right now is get the first key. And this key will open up my route back to the main hall. And more importantly, I'll be able to get some of the first upgrades for Claire. The whole idea of upgrading your characters, that is definitely new to Resident Evil 2, and I think pretty much new to Resident Evil 7 as well. It was featured, I think, in the more action-oriented games. So, here we're finding more flame rounds, as well as getting this box. And the box right here basically unlocks both Leon and Claire's third major weapon. Leon gets the Magnum, Claire gets the SMG. But I didn't take it because I didn't like the SMG. And again, we'll talk more about those differences when we get to that specific section. Now, right here, I'm just trying to clear out this hallway because I'm going to be revisiting it several times. And we'll fast forward things a little bit more here while this guy is stumbling around. But I made a mistake in terms of my ordering of items by not going to get the weapon locker key, which is in the east hallway where we first came in. Instead, I kind of rushed here to get this item upgrade. And again, because I already played the game, I had the save combo saved. Well, I hope I did. I actually had to look it up really fast. And again, with this being my third time playing this game, or I'm sorry, the fourth time, I wasn't really going to be following the normal route. But with the save combo here, I'm going to get the first of 3 possible inventory upgrades on hardcore. There are more of the lower difficulties, but you're not going to get them here. Now, here's where you get another upgrade, and this is for both Claire and Leon's basic weapon. On the B route, though, it doesn't really work as well because you start off with a higher quality gun that uses the stronger bullets. But as the footage gets, as we cut things a little bit forward here, I'm going to see where we get to, and we're going to start making some progress on the second floor of the police station. So, we're entering the second floor major area for the third medallion. And this is where things will basically wrap up for the first part of Resident Evil 2. We're not quite there yet. And one of my other mistakes here was doing this whole part out of order. I should have gotten the grenade launcher by now. But I'm killing this enemy with a knife primarily because this is a scripted event. If he is still up there when we get the third piece or the third medallion, he is going to come to life and attack me. And that's a major strategy of playing this game, is knowing what triggers zombies or enemy spawns and either dealing with them beforehand or avoiding them. And here I made another mistake. By going down this ladder, I triggered a zombie. Not that one, that guy that was feasting down there. And he's kind of now up and about. So right now we're basically opening up the route back to the main hallway. And I'm going to now, I believe, go and get the grenade launcher. But this is another spawn right here. If you get too close to that guy, he wakes up. You can also kill zombies who could possibly trigger like that, and just ignore and get rid of them that way. But I kind of let more zombies in this main hall, which wasn't exactly the smartest thing to do. And again, like I said, I made a lot of dumb mistakes for this play that I will probably have to correct going forward. So that guy probably won't come into this hallway, so I just left him alone. And I typically don't go into that east hallway all that much. Because again, the more areas you have to go into, the more you have to clean them out, which means more ammo. And with this being the B route though, I had to do it because of how things are connected going forward. But let's cut things a little bit more here. I also colored up that window again to prevent spawns later on. It was at this point that I finally got around to getting the weapon locker key, which I really should have gotten pretty much within like the first minute to 2 minutes of starting this play, as this unlocks the grenade launcher and gives you a little more security in terms of dealing with enemies. Now, I left the zombie in this room because he's just going to wander around. We really don't care about him, and we're not going to come back to this room anyway. But I think with that, this is probably the best time to talk about the weapon classes or the different weapons in Resident Evil 2. Now, both Leon and Claire get access to different weapons over the course of playing, and we're just going to list them out right here. Leon starts out with his basic handgun. He will get the shotgun, the flamethrower, or I'm sorry, he'll get the Magnum first, flamethrower, and then the rocket launcher at the very end. Claire gets 2 different handguns. One that automatically has a laser sight, which is considered to be one of the best handguns, I think, in the game. She will get the grenade launcher, as you saw there, the submachine gun, the spark shot, which is kind of like a electrical javelin thing, reminds me a little bit of Dead Space, and then the Gatling gun at the very end. Now, the various weapons in the game are all designed around providing more utility to the player, some better than others, and again, we'll talk about those differences later on. For Claire here with the grenade launcher, it is definitely not as good as the shotgun. It has 2 weapon types, the flame ammo and the acid rounds. Flame you can find, acid you can craft. And while they do great splash damage, they just lack the utility that Leon has. But at this point in this play, I got all the major items that I needed, and I figured that it was now time to start pushing towards the main progression in Police Station. Again, that is getting the 3 medallions. Now, the medallions, like we've said, are the only gate that stops you from moving on to the next part of Resident Evil 2. And part of the challenge of the B side is the fact that you're not given those clues at the start. You have to actually hunt them down. But once you know what they are, or you have a guide, you can move through this very quickly. Speedrunners who know how to optimize their way through, you can get through this first part of the game in about 25 to 30 minutes. Now, of course, you are going to be ignoring lots of items and areas, but that is kind of the the challenge there. But with each medallion in play, you'll be able to get through that statue. And what's going to happen is, as we move forward here, we're going to run into everybody's favorite big bad. And while Mr. X has certainly dominated the conversation about Resident Evil 2, we'll be talking more about him when he shows up the second time in the B-side run. So right now what I'm doing, besides just kind of dancing around these zombies because I don't have the ammo to fight them, is that I'm trying to get the remaining medallions. There's one in the main hall, the one near the library as you saw, and those two are the easy ones. It's number 3 that really starts to get in your way. And I'm going to head up there to deal with that one now. Now here's where I make another mistake in this play. I spent extra time trying to get this badge, which is used to unlock the submachine gun. And the submachine gun, to be honest, is not that good of a weapon. What I should have done, and what I will probably do going forward, is spend more time collecting the various upgrade parts for Claire's starting pistol, as one of the upgrades you get turns it into a magnum, and you can use magnum rounds with it for some of the later fights. So what I'm doing right now is preparing for getting the final medallion. And the reason why I'm preparing is that I know that once we get it, it is going to trigger Mr. X, or just even getting the item that I need. So I need to be prepared. And that's why I'm kind of clearing this part out here, setting up the detonator. As a fun fact, on the A routes, this detonator will trigger a liquor. And you haven't seen them yet in this dissection, but we're going to be talking about them when Claire gets to the garage. But right now, once again, I'm trying to get back down to where I need the battery for it, and we're just going to fast forward to that part. Alright, so this is where things start to go horribly wrong if you're not prepared, as this event will always trigger Mr. X to appear. And if you know what you're doing and can move fast enough, you can basically do everything that you need to do before he becomes too big of a bother. Now here's where I'm getting the submachine gun, which again I think was kind of a mistake for this play. And you can actually take that badge and use it in a later area to get an upgrade for the submachine gun, which again was just going to be wasted time. Now, if you don't do your tasks in the right order, this becomes arguably a lot more frustrating and difficult to deal with, as Mr. X, once he is spawned in, will engage you until you leave the area. So, right now I'm just gathering what I can, because I know I am not going to be coming back here anytime soon. And here we go. Just waiting for it. And no, you're not going to be hearing the X going to give it to you music here, I'm afraid. But there he is. And Mr. X, again, is now going to be engaged with me in all areas of the police station. Now, the reason I ran here is that I know that he does not go into the STAR's office. So I can just safely let him go wander somewhere else and just ignore him. Right now, I'm opening up again another shortcut, which again, the police station is full of them to allow you to get around. Again, these zombies here are going to cause me a lot of trouble. But at this point, I just said, screw it, and let's just get that medallion and move on in the play. So we're going to set this up, and then we're going to run in and out of the door to prevent things from stopping. Now the footage is going to cut simply because the PlayStation 4 just stopped recording after an hour of play. And we're going to go get this medallion here. And this is the final one for it. And after that, we're going to make a straight beeline for the main hall, because we are technically done. There is nothing else we need for this section. And once we go down into Area 2, basically the police station kind of, I wouldn't say morphs, but the enemy placements start to change, kind of in preparation for when you return to the police station. At this point, we're going to fast forward because the PlayStation decides to also cut out the footage here, as we're about to get to the period where we made, or I made, some major progress in the first and second part of the game. So right now, I am being chased by our friend Mr. X here, as he was blocking my way from the library back to the main hall. So in my, I guess, quote-unquote infinite wisdom here, I decided to run back through here as a way to lose him, and to kind of get myself ready for the next part. Now, I don't remember, because it's been a few days since I played this, but I think Mr. X gets stuck in the door here. And that's always a very fun thing to get caught on recording. But right now I'm just setting up for when I go to fight the game's first boss. And this is me kind of just doing like a mental check. And okay, where do I have to go now? And are there any items worth it to pick up? Or should I just get the heck out of here? But let's see, does he show up? And you can't hear it just through my talking, but you can hear his heavy boots stomping around. Now what's going to come up in a few seconds is something that I didn't even realize that happened, or that happens in the game. And that is that enemies can actually enter this part coming up despite the fact that it is a safe area. And it is a transition into the next part of the game. So I was busy grabbing ammo, I was doing my save here because I was so excited, and then I look right up there, and lo and behold, there's a zombie about to come and get me. And I was not expecting that. So much so that I wasted more ammo by the fact that I realized that I'm not coming back this way ever again. And that was just me again fumbling around. So I decided to stab him, I guess, in frustration. But we're going to fast forward a little bit and get to the first boss. So, we're heading towards the G1 fight, and this is the first official boss of Resident Evil 2. It is the same fight regardless if you're playing as Leon or Claire. And it's probably my least favorite of the bosses in the game. And the reason I'm going to skip this cutscene as well is that it's just all about essentially the bullet sponge here. Now, he will go through these two stages of being weak or aggressive. When he's in his aggressive state right here, his eye opens up on his shoulder, and that is his weak point. The whole idea is you want to bait him into performing attacks so you know you can easily get those shots off. Now, regardless, his body will take damage. It's just that the eye does more of it. So you're going to be seeing me kind of dancing around this area here. Oh, now that was a good hit with the grenade launcher. And the acid rounds do seem to work better on bosses than they seem to on normal enemies. Now there we got a good hit on his eye. And every few minutes or so, he will transition back into normal G1 or normal Birkin. Not sure what we officially call him at this point. I think it is just G1. Now he's going to pop down from the ceiling here. I keep checking the map because I want to make sure I don't run into a corner here. And I believe I only get hit one time. And that was by just, I didn't realize it worked like that. And it was right there. I thought that get up animation was just a passive one. But apparently it wasn't. Now the reason why I don't like this fight is that there are no extra elements in this environment that allow you to do more damage or get around him. And you'll see that happen in the later bosses. So I'm just chasing him around here. And what I should have done was actually slowed my pace a little bit just so he would get into attack range and trigger a move. That attack right there is the best time to actually go in for hitting him. So we're just dancing around some more. But I'm going to speed things up a little bit more here as the fight just kind of goes on like this. Another issue I have with this battle is that because there aren't any additional mechanics or ways to get by him, if you don't have the ammo, you can run into a situation where you cannot hurt G1. And that actually happened to me the first time I played RE2. And I'm going to cut things to just before he dies, and we'll move on to our next section. So here I'm just using up all my ammo in just some mad attempt to deal with him. But he finally goes down, and it's very weird watching this fast forward as well. But there he goes. I just love that sound effect too. But we're going to skip ahead to entering the next major part of the game, and we're going to actually talk about the enemy that probably freaks out the most people when they run into him next. Now the garage is kind of your in-between before you return back to the police station, and it's suitably easier for Claire than it is for Leon. despite the fact that Claire's going to have more nasty enemies to run into. Now right here, this is where you can actually get Claire's second handgun or Leon's upgrade, but I'm just going to get some ammo here. For Leon, he goes to the west side of the garage, to the jail, and has to deal with basically a jail full of zombies. Claire simply has to come over here. And this is where we run into one of the harder enemies. I'm going to slow the footage down here so we can talk about it. So this is where Claire basically enters Liquor Alley. And these are the liquors. And you're going to see I'm not going to be focusing too much of my camera on them. Liquors are a return from Resident Evil 2, the original, but are a lot nastier in this one, especially due to the free aiming and location-based damage. The rules of the liquor are that they are blind, and they can only sense you by smell and sound. If you fire a gun or any weapon in the same room as a liquor, they will come running at you. They do a lot of damage, and they will pretty much two-shot you in almost any situation. Now, dealing with them can either be by using a lot of ammo, but the real best strategy is to simply just walk, basically do your fastest walk, and avoid them like that. But I'm going to cut forward here, and you're going to see that this liquor was not in a place I want him to be, because they are generally fast when you're walking around them, that is. So I did a little run to trigger them. He just did that slash, and that should have and will reset their position. You want them on walls or ceilings at all times, because they take a few extra seconds to actually get back down on the floor. So here I am holding my breath as we just walk for dear life out of this room. There's only one more liquor in this hallway coming up, and again, as long as I just keep moving at a slow pace, they will not do anything for me. So you can see them kind of coming down the wall on the left side there. But this is pretty much it. The whole garage section is done for Claire. Leon does a little bit more, and he runs into these Cerberus enemies at this point. For Claire, that happens later on, and we'll talk more about them when we get to that section. But as we move forward in the dissection, we're returning to the police station for one final time, and then we're officially done with this area for the rest of the game. Back at the police station, our goal is to collect 2 electronic parts that will get us access to the key that we need to get through the parking garage. For Claire here, her new base of operations is in this east area. It's kind of a trophy room spot for the police chief. Leon has the place downstairs that we began the game as on the B side. But this is also where Mr. X officially shows up on the A side. And he's a lot more challenging this time around because there's more to do while he is chasing you. So I'm going to skip forward to that part, and we're going to talk now about Mr. X's design. So Mr. X always shows up at this specific event. And as a special announcement, if you'd like me to sing, X is going to give it to you, please donate 100 grand to Super Chat right this moment. I'll wait. But we'll wait a second here while he comes stomping in. Mr. X is designed around a kind of form that I like to call an alpha antagonist. What that means is that this is an enemy that you cannot kill or actively engage, but will track and pursue the player over the course of the game. The best example of this is the Xenomorph from Alien Isolation. Mr. X doesn't go that far, I'm afraid. He shows up essentially in Claire's game here, 2 specific points. Leon gets him in an additional part as well. But the general design is that he will track you based on sound, as well as showing up at key events during the play. For instance, in Leon's playthrough, when you go into the jail cell to activate the parts at this point, he will show up right then and there to get you. Now, this is what I like to call the Hell Hallway, because now I have to deal with the liquor, Mr. X, and if I didn't board up those doors or those windows, more zombies. And there's a good chance I may actually die in this footage. I forget how things go here. But here I am walking for dear life. And For this part, pretty much, Mr. X is always going to show up. I don't think there's any way that he actually gets around. So here we go. At this point, I decided to say, you know what? Screw that guy, shoot him in the leg, and then run like hell. But what you saw right there is the best strategy for dealing with most of the zombies in RE2. And that's shooting them in the knee or foot to stagger them. And like we were talking about earlier, unless you're going to return to an area, you just need to get by them. And you'll see more of that later on. Now, if you listen very carefully, you may have just heard some footsteps. That is our friend Mr. X slowly but surely coming to get me. In terms of damage, Mr. X doesn't do as much damage compared to other enemies in the game. He has a punch, he has kind of like a lift up and slam against the ground, and he does have a finishing move attack where he will grab you and then squeeze the life out of you that you need a sub-weapon to avoid. Otherwise though, he's not that bad to avoid. And there was me making mistake number, I've lost count how many mistakes we're at, where I kind of ran to that hallway knowing that there was a licker there and kind of pissed them off. And I'm pretty sure either I'm going to die here or I'm going to take a lot of damage. In fact, I'm kind of curious how this footage is going to play out because I don't remember. But yeah, I think I'm going to get hit really bad. You're going to see what happens when the licker spots you. And look, there's Mr. X. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we die right here. It will be a miracle if I get past this. Oh, but maybe I did. But you can see how Mr. X really messes with you. Like, he's not really a threat in the sense that he's going to attack you, but he compounds what's around you. So, one-on-one, you can dodge and duck and weave as easily as you can. When you got him with lickers and zombies and Cerberuses, I think I may have just butchered that, it's another story entirely. But he's still mechanically driven. I know where he's going to show up, and I know where I can hide that he will not be able to get me. Now, he's probably going to be coming up after me here, but one of the things that Capcom did is that Mr. X will not show up in puzzle rooms. Oop, and that guy just did not want to get staggered. Oh, and this is another really good Josh screwed up moment. Please take a sip every time we have one of those for those of you watching. I didn't take the clock gear that I would be using for a puzzle because I didn't think I was going to be going this way with Mr. X engaging me. But this would have actually solved a lot of issues and actually cut down this playthrough quite dramatically. And I'm going to be cutting ahead in a second here, but I want you to see, again, the extent or the limitation of Mr. X's design as soon as I'm done doing some more organizing. So, this is when we get to see it. Here he comes, he's coming to get me, and he is stopped. No matter how much he wants to get me, Mr. X is not going to give it to me. And like I said, I could have avoided a lot of this if I would have kept that item. Oh, thank you, Mr. X, which actually helped me because it got me around him so I can then make the move to this puzzle. But, like I was saying, high-level play of Resident Evil 2 is knowing explicitly what items to pick up and the order to get them, and in order of doing them. And it makes your life a lot easier being able to figure that out. It was how I was able to get an S+ rank with Leon in a play that you probably won't be seeing. But, once this puzzle is done, this will allow me access to essentially the kind of the side act in Resident Evil 2. Leon has one with Ada, and Claire has one with Sherry. And that is going to be the best time. We're going to talk a little bit more about the differences between the two plays. And while kind of like things play out for Sherry, because it's kind of boring to watch. Alright, so I've slowed things down here because Sherry's section here is very basic. It's just simply a stealth section with some puzzles. And I want to focus more on the differences between the two characters of Leon and Claire. So, it's very interesting about how the difficulty between the two characters plays out over the course of their individual playthroughs, as they both have easier or harder times. Claire's time in the sewer, which is the next section after this, is arguably easier than Leon. She has less to do there. While Leon has easier times once he gets his shotgun and dealing with a lot of the minor zombies. Claire's grenade launcher works better against the boss fights due to the amount of damage it puts out, but because the ammo is more limited, it's a lot harder to kind of have her deal with those zombies and even stuff like the Cerberuses and things along those lines. Claire relies a lot more on handgun ammo than Leon does, I feel. In terms of these bonus sections, the Sherry section is easier than Ada's, but it's also more time consuming, as you're forced to wait around for a very annoying stealth section near the end of it. When it comes to kind of the overall play, Leon, I think for the most part, is easier. His final boss fight with the Super Tyrant, which you won't be seeing in this video, is definitely harder than Claire's final battle with, I guess that is considered G4, I believe, if we go by their various connotations. But I'm curious for the people watching, if you have played through the game, who do you find easier? Because again, Claire definitely has some easier parts to her than Leon. The return to the police station is easier for Claire because of the fact that you have the base of operations in the chief's room. Even the parking garage section is a lot quicker. Even though you have to deal with lickers, as you saw earlier, it is so much easier to get around them once you know what you're doing. Now, to compensate for that, after this section, Claire has an exclusive part where she has to fight Cerberuses out in the world before returning to the sewer. But while things are going along here, I think ultimately what makes things easier for Leon is that he gets better weapons than Claire does. The flamethrower is just a beast against the G fights, and if you use them properly, it is possible to just completely wreck both G2 and G3 Birkin. The Magnum is of course amazing, but it's the shotgun that definitely wins out in the end. You get several upgrades to it, improving both ammo capacity as well as damage, and you can pretty much one-shot zombies and stagger the Ivy enemies that we'll be talking about later on in this dissection. Claire simply doesn't have that utility. And again, the grenade launcher just is more of a boss weapon than it is a general use. The only time I really used the grenade launcher for regular enemies was when I was using flame rounds on the IVs. But this is the part in the play where things slow down, as Sherry here is being chased by the chief, and this is a forced stealth section. You have to move to specific points on it, or the chief will catch you and it's game over. I can imagine this being more stressful if you're going for an S+ run, when you can only get 3 saves in an entire play. But because I did screw up several times here, I'm going to cut things and we're going to get back to Claire. Because again, it's just story exposition from that point on. So, with this point, the police station is officially done. And incidentally, this will be the last time, or one of the last times, we're going to be seeing Mr. X, at least in Claire's play of it. Now, at this point, this is when we get the exclusive section with Claire going outside to fight the dogs again. And I'm going to cut the footage here to show that off, and we're going to get back up to our normal, faster speed. So we're back in the garage, and this officially ends a police station. But, lo and behold, we have Ninja X showing up. But again, as long as you can move around him, you have enough space, he is not that big of a threat. Now, this whole section that you're seeing right here, this is exclusive to Claire. Leon simply just walks out, goes to the gun shop, and then he's right in the sewer. Claire has to do a little bit more here, along with Mr. X trying to get you. But this is also Claire's one and only run-in with the Cerberus dogs. So we're going to talk about their design right now, and we'll slow things down a little bit when they appear. So the Cerberuses are of course a long-standing enemy in Resident Evil, In this one, they are the most agile enemy in the game. They're able to leap fences, go underneath doors and vents, and they will track you down pretty much as long as you don't go into an area where they will not follow like a save room. They're going to hunt you. And it's very interesting, their design, because they're probably the most action-oriented enemy in RE2. As you saw there, the dog leaping onto the car, you'll see in a few minutes a dog leaping over a fence to get to me. With that said, though, they are also the only enemy where you can just pretty much hit them in any part of their body and you will kill them fast. They have the lowest health out of all the enemies in the game, probably to compensate for how agile they are. But you just saw there, you could barely see the dog leaping over that fence to get to me, and he's going to do it again, but we stopped him. And what's very interesting about these Cerberuses in RE2 is that they really only show up in one area for both characters. Claire has them in this in-between, between the police station and the orphanage. Leon has them during his garage/jail section. Afterwards, they don't show up at all, which is very surprising considering that Lickers do make an appearance later on in the game, but these guys just kind of appear this one time, and then that's it. Usually, rapid-fire weapons work really well, or if you can snipe them from a distance, that will take them out as well. But with that said, we're going to skip ahead a little bit and get some, I guess, a brief spoiler cutscene of Mr. X next. Yeah, I'm not going to be showing every cutscene, but this is some good old cathartic release here, as Mr. X says goodbye after all the troubles he's put us through over the course of this play. And this is officially the last time we will see Mr. X in this playthrough. He does not show up at the end like he does in Leon, well, for obvious reasons there. But we're going to skip ahead a little bit and discuss kind of the back half of the game now. We are officially in the sewers, and this is when the game speeds up dramatically. The back half of RE2 is just noticeably a lot faster to run through. I think partly because the level designs become a lot more focused, and the fact that we now pretty much have the majority of our weapons intact. For both Claire and Leon, they will receive one upgrade to their previous weapons here in the game's final save. Claire gets access to Magnum abilities, while Leon gets an upgrade for his shotgun. Now, the sewers themselves are very short in terms of where you have to move through, but they are a bit different in terms of their design compared to the police station. Here, you're going to have to dip in and out of kind of the actual sewer lines while dealing with kind of the run killer enemy for RE2, and that's the G Adult, and we'll examine them in a few minutes. But while I'm kind of paused here and trying to decide where we need to go, in the sewers, your overall objective is to find these various plugs, which are going to be used to open up the door to the next G fight. But as you can see here, I'm kind of using the game's own mechanics against it to quickly deal with these zombies or get them out of the way. It probably would have been better, I think this is another mistake I made, just to run in and just get down the ladder before they kind of crowded the door. There is a lock here which I'm not even going to bother to open. But this is where, after this part, we kind of get your base of operations in the sewers. But with that said, we're going to move forward here and show off kind of the area where you will most likely get killed by the G Adults. I'm slowing things down here so we can spend a few minutes talking about the G Adults. So, as a bit of a fun fact, in the original Resident Evil 2, the G Adult was a boss fight that you had to deal with. For the remake, they have now been, I guess, downgraded to a common enemy. But they only show up in the sewers, at least in the main game, and they can be very troublesome to deal with when you first meet them. So right now I'm being very cautious because that little blob you see in the ground or in the water is about to wake up. Now the G Adults are lumbering and very annoying to deal with thanks to how their animations play out, like you saw right there. They have a few set attacks that they will do, and it can be very troublesome to get around them. They can either do a horizontal swipe, a double horizontal swipe, spawn G-babies to attack you, do an overhead slam. Oh, and this guy only shows up when you're playing this game on on the B rank, or the B side. Or, their most dangerous one, they will grab you. If you don't have a sub-weapon, they will kill you in one hit if your health is not at fine condition. Otherwise, it will poison you. And poison will cause you to constantly cough and prevent you from doing anything unless you cure it with a blue herb. And while this puzzle is playing out and I make this return, this is a great time to talk a little bit more about the sub-item or item design of the game. With the G adults, this is where you'll have to rely on the various items as an emergency to get around them. Now, once you know their pattern, even then it can still be troublesome, as you have to read it and then predict what they're going to do next. But most likely you're going to have to use some items. And we've talked a little bit before about the items in Resident Evil 2 in terms of kind of like the herbs. But to recap everything and kind of put all here, besides having your various guns and such, the herbs themselves do perform very essential functions, especially on hardcore difficulty. Using the red herb will allow you to fully heal with a green herb, but the biggest function of them is with blue herbs. The blue herbs themselves will provide you not only with poison resistance, but they'll give you a little shield. That's that icon you see in the bottom right hand corner of the screen next to my ammo. The shield essentially reduces the amount of damage you take. I believe it goes down to what's considered the difficulty beforehand. So instead of dying in 2 hits, it may take 4 or 5 for me to go down at full health. And that's a very big deal at this difficulty. And why most players, when they're learning the game, will keep a blue herb or a blue-green-red combo or 2 on them for each boss. Now the sub-items, the knife, the grenade, and the flash grenade, all have secondary functions besides just being used for defense. And it's a very nifty idea in terms of providing the player with some more emergency options. The knife can be used to attack enemies that are on the ground or who haven't been triggered yet to try and deal with them. Or it can be used to get a zombie off of you, or any enemy. Grenades, while they can be used for defense, are much more useful, or have much more utility, just throwing them into a crowd and either dealing with them, or at least knocking them down, and then kind of putting them to sleep. I usually use a grenade whenever there are 3 or more zombies in an area that I need to get to. The flash grenade will stun everything, and it can be very useful for Leon in the jail, or, once again, there's a huge crowd of enemies that you just don't want to deal with. Now, I did pick up the Spark Shot, which is Claire's second to last weapon before she gets the Gatling gun at the end. So, while I'm busy trying to get through this puzzle, we're going to fast forward to the next G fight and talk more about that one. So, from here, we start the G2 battle. And this one, I think this may be my favorite boss of the game because it has a lot more of the environmental interactions with it. It always starts out with this section where you can actually glitch or bug out the fight by hanging out right here. So he's just going to be trying to track you, but the reason why he can't get you is just, I think, due to the geometry of the ceiling and those 2 vent fans up there. Now he's going to break through this door, and we're going to run right by him. And you'll find you can run past a lot of the enemy models in this game. But we're going to begin the fight proper now. To win, it comes down to using the crane to knock him with that giant container. Now this is where kind of the interesting behind the scenes of Resident Evil 2's design comes into play. As our man G here, or G2, has a health bar. You just don't see it. As we do damage with any of our weapons, or doing additional damage by hitting him in the eye, his health will go down. Now, when he takes enough damage, he will stagger, and he'll drop down to 1 knee. And you should see that happening in a few seconds. You can still do damage to him while he's on 1 knee, and kind of prepare him for the next phase, or the next attack. When he gets hit by the crane, he takes a lot of damage. But speedrun strategies involve basically doing enough damage to override or get past certain cycles. That's why I'm using the knife here. Now this is me making another mistake. I should have attacked him closer or on the other side of the arena, so that way the crane would have hit him. But somehow I avoided the damage. Well, not that time. But the point about fighting G2 here is that all damage you're doing is being applied to his health pool. And speedrun strats is basically knowing exactly how much damage to do to put him into the quote-unquote death range so that the crane will one-cycle him. Or at most, or at least, two-cycle. If you go to 3, then it takes too long. Now for the actual combat, he is somewhat predictable. I can kind of dance him around in a circle. But it's very dangerous when he starts doing a lot of his horizontal slices, because you can't really dodge as effectively in this game compared to other ones. Now, when he does that jump forward slash down, it creates kind of a air AoE that doesn't do damage, it just pushes you back. But as you know, is a good strategy for a lot of the bosses in this game is the, I guess, rope-a-dope strategy here. But he is going to eventually, or I'm going to hopefully get that hit off. This is when I start slowing down and just trying to peck at his eye a little bit with my machine gun. But he is going to get staggered in a few seconds. There we go. And it's the same animation each time. Now, interestingly, if you don't hit the button fast enough, he may just start running at you. So here he goes. He's going, but he got the hit anyway. Now, with the amount of damage I did, though, that wasn't enough. Another potential strategy you can use is throwing a flash grenade to stagger him while you do more damage to him. But with all the damage that I've done to him during this phase, the next time the crane comes, it will be a kill. Now there is the acid, which again, acid works really well on the bosses in Resident Evil 2, but Leon's shotgun just has more utility. Oh, he's doing that swing. And now you're going to see some very clutch play right here, or some lucky play, as soon as I try to grab some more ammo. As he's going to get up, he's going to come running, but just at the right moment, the crane comes to finish him. With that, we officially beat the halfway point. We're now in the final quarter of Resident Evil 2. We're going to take a quick Patreon shower break, and then we're going to talk about the lab design, as well as my thoughts on where Resident Evil 2 stands compared to other titles in the series. And now for a quick thank you to our Patreon backers. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, you'll find our Discord channel linked down below. Before we talk about the lab, I'm going to use this kind of in-between to talk a little bit more about Resident Evil 2 versus the other games in the franchise, more specifically Resident Evil 7. As 7 was the one that kind of brought the series back to more of its survival horror roots, as opposed to the action focus of 4, 5, 6, and those spin-offs. With Resident Evil 2 versus 7 here, it's very interesting about the two. From a thematic point of view, I think Resident Evil 7 is a better game. The Baker household, the threat of the molded, and even just the fact that you had these principal or primary antagonists, I think helped to raise the stakes of the situation compared to Resident Evil 2, where basically we spend the majority of this game going, who's the bad guy? What are we actually fighting? And we never, at least from the character standpoint, really get to know what's going on with Birkin and the threats of Umbrella. A lot of that stuff is, of course, explained or tries to be explained in later entries. From a mechanical standpoint, however, I do think Resident Evil 2 is better. It feels more balanced, especially with the weight of your weapons and their utility versus the enemy designs. The Licker, Cerberus, Zombie, Ivy, and G-Adults are just a much better cast of enemies compared to the various molded varieties of Resident Evil 7. With that said, though, both games still have trouble with making interesting boss fights. The G2 fight is probably my favorite of the Resident Evil 2 enemies or bosses, but that's not really saying much, as both games rely a lot on more of a bullet sponge kind of battle. and not much in terms of getting around unless you have enough ammo. Now, I'm very curious to see what lessons Capcom takes from RE2 if/when they decide to move to RE3, especially with redesigning Nemesis. I hope he's a lot more involved compared to Mr. X here. Maybe more along the lines of how the, I forget his name, the Baker Patriarch would chase you around the manor. Would be more interesting. But there's still plenty of time to talk about that. With that said, though, let's talk a little bit more about the lab design itself as we move forward. The lab is the simplest, I think, of the environments in Resident Evil 2. It's also the shortest part, especially on the B side, where mission-critical items are given to you a lot earlier. And if you already know the combination of stuff that you need, things are going to go by very quickly. The biggest threat of this area is the introduction of the IV zombies. Now here I kind of screwed up. I was trying to get this guy inside so that I could just deal with him like that. But I just didn't get that working, so I just ran out the door. But you also get your third and final inventory upgrade here, as well as an upgrade for whatever your third weapon is, whether it's Leon or Claire. The whole point of this is trying to get these key code accesses to the final part where your mysterious either virus or antivirus sample remains. But the main point about this area, besides the reintroduction of liquors later on, is having to fight the IV zombies. The IVs are the final new enemy, not counting the boss fights that are introduced in Resident Evil 2. And these guys can be very nasty. Their general rule is that if you do not have any defensive items on, they are an instant kill, no matter what your health is. While you can do damage to them, the only way to make them permanently dead is to burn the body, either using Leon's flamethrower or Claire's fire or flame rounds. And this is where Leon definitely has the advantage in terms of the easiness of this section, as he can just shoot them down and then light them up with a flamethrower, while Claire has to make use of those precious flame ammo that hopefully you didn't use up on earlier enemies and fights. But with not much happening in the game, at least for right now, this is a good time to talk about a few of the issues that I think like overall had with Resident Evil 2, and then we'll move on to the final act of the game. Resident Evil 2, despite how dynamic the actual enemies are, is still very mechanically designed, meaning that it's built on scripts and triggers to kind of guide the player or repeat elements again and again. What you saw right there with the liquor dropping down, that is a set event that will happen every time you walk down that hallway. Those zombies that I walk past in that big lunch area, they will always get up at the exact same time the liquor appears. Knowing that information, it allows players to just completely wreck or tear through this game. And I think this is why this game could become very popular for speedrunning compared to Resident Evil 7 that had randomized drops. In this one, once you know the path through the game, that is fixed every time. Even elements like Mr. X can be tricked or exploited to get around them. And I would love to have seen maybe like a randomizer or some kind of mode for that in this game to kind of mix things up and keep the player on their toes. The first time I played through Resident Evil 2, it took me I think like 7 or 8 hours, and part of that was me getting lost a few times. My best run at this game is now 2 hours and 24 minutes, getting an S+ rank. And at this point, this game has just become like almost on autopilot once you know what you're doing. But I would love to see more of that dynamic or emergent behavior that we saw with the zombies kind of apply to the rest of the game or rest of the design if they decide to continue with this style again in future titles in the franchise. But that is about it for the lab and for the design. It's time to talk about the G3 fight and set us up for the end of the game. But here we have the G3 fight. And this is the same battle whether you're playing as Leon or Claire. Although I think Leon has an easier time with it thanks to the awesome power of the flamethrower. But this is a 3-stage boss fight. The boss has a health pool, but he only will take damage if you destroy those lovely eyes on him. And for Claire here, you can use your acid rounds either as damage or to stun lock him, and that is the only weapon in the game that will stun lock G3. Now I had trouble with this fight because, again, I really wasn't balancing my ammo throughout this game and knowing what to take. And he has those lovely horizontal slashes that can wreck you. I actually had a much easier time doing this on my S Plus route with Leon just because I knew what to expect. Now, for this part again, we're just trying to knock out those eyes on him, get behind him, shoot him, and that will trigger stage 2 of this battle. Again, I'm just trying to figure out what I need to bring. Going forward, I think for this fight I probably should have brought some grenades or additional items to kind of hit everything on him, because I had a lot saved. And that also kind of screwed me for the next battle as well. But the footage kind of cut there just due to the PlayStation 4's recording software. As he enters stage 2, he becomes a little bit more predictable as he starts throwing in this kind of jump attack that you see right there. If he catches you with it, it can trigger an instant kill if you don't have any sub-weapons, but also leaves him very vulnerable. Again, I'm just trying to do as much damage as I can. I also really should have gotten the upgrade for Claire's starting revolver and use magnum rounds to tear through these eyeballs, because you really only have a limited window to get a safe hit off. But I didn't like this fight as much as the G2 battle because, again, it really is more of an ammo battle rather than using the environment to aid you as with G2. So I'm just trying to get in those attacks when I can. There I stunned him using the acid rounds, and I also got a hit or pop that eye. But he's about to go into stage 3 as soon as we finish with that shoulder eye of his. And I was just having some trouble getting the shots and stuff angled in, just because of my inexperience with Claire. I think I may have missed as well. But once we get into stage 3 of this battle, that's when his entire body becomes a hitbox, and you're free to engage him as aggressively as you can. But at this point, it's just about doing more damage. I should have kept using acid rounds if I had any left, just to keep stun locking him while doing damage, but he eventually went down. Now, with that done, the final act of the game is different based on whether you're playing as Leon or Claire. Leon has the harder of the two battles, dealing with the Super Tyrant. It's an environment that is small, he has an instant kill ability, and the guy attacks very wide and fast. Claire, on the other hand, has to fight G4, and we're going to load up that footage and show things off, as well as the true ending that you can only get while playing the B-side routes. But G4 fight is another battle that I'm not a huge fan of. So he's about to come down right here. There he goes. And for this battle, this is a fight that it may look like you're doing up damage to him, but the only way you can hurt him is by aiming and destroying the eyes that show up in the middle of him. There's also the one time I'm using the spark shot as well. For this battle, again, I made a mistake of not taking all those grenades that I've been hoarding over the course of play. Because again, with all these little individual eyes, it would have made more sense to use splash damage and stuff like that. I also messed up on the shot of the spark shot, aiming for like his arms or his body, when I again should have been focusing on those eyes. Now I did pick up the Gatling gun, but you really want to save that for the end, especially if you're playing this on the B side, just so you have an easy answer for the true final battle. Again, very simple fight in terms of its pattern. All you really need to do is just keep on aiming for those eyes, running around, and he will probably never touch you. But I was just really hoping for, again, more environmental or interesting challenges rather than a bullet sponge situation. And this fight, again, I almost came really close to losing it, simply because I just wasn't doing the damage to specifically the eyeballs. But as this fight goes on, I'm going to just fast forward to the end here, because we are almost done with this Dissecting Design, thankfully. There's only a few more sections left. But, very quickly, the G fight here, again, really epitomizes the mechanical nature of a lot of the design of Resident Evil 2. And once you know what those mechanics are, it becomes very exploitable. And again, speedrunners and expert players have gotten this down to a science in terms of how to beat this guy as quickly as possible. And again, I really should have done more of those grenades there. However, let's get to the grand finale, and I'll also give my final thoughts on the game. But with the final G4 battle, for people playing on the B side, they get this G5 fight, which is just literally a giant bullet sponge for you to pour your ammo into when his weak point shows up. I think I may have almost lost this just because I didn't take enough ammo with me. And again, that was just due to my inexperience with Claire B. But while I'll let the fight play out in the background here, let me talk about my final thoughts on the game. Despite some of the issues I had with the mechanical nature, Resident Evil 2 is still a really great game. It definitely straddles that line between survival and action horror. I think the enemy designs in this game really do keep it on the survival side, as you really have to prepare yourself for dealing with each one of the threats, as opposed to them just throwing 40 fodder-style enemies at you at the same time. I would love to see, I think, more of a merging of Resident Evil 7's more intimate style with the first person, or kind of being able to block and deal with enemies like that, with Resident Evil 2's mechanical elements of gun upgrades, the dynamic enemies, situations like that. But overall though, Capcom seems to be 2 for 2 right now in terms of really great survival horror games, and that is quite a shock considering the past few years of the genre. But as Claire, Leon, and Sherry make their escape, it is at long last time to wrap up this Dissecting Design. This is also on record my longest one on a single game, so I hope everybody enjoyed it. But with all that said, if you are a fan of the horror genre and looking for a really great modern entry, definitely check out Resident Evil 2. And for a long time, I am honestly really excited to see what else we see from Capcom going forward in terms of Resident Evil. Whether or not we'll get a Resident Evil 3 remake or a Resident Evil 8 first remains to be seen. Now, the only part of Resident Evil 2 that we are not looking at in this video are the bonus episodes. That would be Hunk, Tofu, the Ghost Survivors, and so on. The reason is that they are very action heavy, and the focus of this video is talking more about the horror and the design of the main content of Resident Evil 2. But that is that. So once again, I would like to thank you for sticking through this entire dissection. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until next time, have a great night. If you're looking for a book on design, my first title, 20 Essential Games to Study, is out now. It is available where most books are sold, and it comes in paper, hardcover, or digital copies. This is the perfect book for anyone interested in learning about game design, whether you are a student, enthusiast, or just a fan. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below, where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it. And tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.